hope that everybody got everything that they needed, is doing well. This class is going to run just like a regular class would. So if you've taken my classes before, this should be the first 5 minutes, 10 minutes is not going to be new for you. But if you are brand new, welcome. I usually ask, I want a show of hands of people who have done this class before. So I cannot see your hand, so I obviously want to ask that question, but I am happy if you are brand new. And we are going to make sure that we have everything in our kits that we need. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to pull everything out of my cookie kit. So for you, your placemat is going to go wherever your workstation is. And we are going to pull everything out. So all of the icings, the cookies. So again, if you missed me say this in the beginning, you have 8 cookies. However, we are only decorating 4. So the purpose wasn't really to decorate all 8 of them or even to have enough icing for 8, but most of the time there is enough icing for 8. I just want to preface that we are decorating 4, so the 4 that are the best looking or whatever, you're going to decorate those. And hopefully if you had any that broke, that was why we did that, so that you have enough cookies so that you're not decorating 2 and we're decorating 4. So that was why we did it. So hopefully everybody was okay with that. You're going to take your cookies and we're going to place them on our little placemat at the top in like a little stack. All right, we're going to take, obviously everything is out, so the only thing that you really don't need right now is your extra bag. That's in case you cut a hole too big. This will all make sense in a little bit, but that will make sense. If you cut a hole too big, then you can always put that in the other bag, or if one of your icings busted in transit, that's why I did that. So we don't necessarily need that right now. But we are going to talk about the piping and kind of the worksheet and just the basics of outlining, which is the trickiest part. So what we're going to do, talking about our icing, so you're going to notice that some of them have a 1 on them, right? So if you're brand new, I did this basically to help people know the difference between the thick and the thin. So the one that has a 1 on it, that's your thick one, your outlining and your detailing. So this one is a little bit thicker. The icing obviously is not as watered down, and so if you wanted then to get the thin one, which does not have a 1 on it, notice how it's definitely a little bit thinner because it was watered down. Now there was something that I had said in your little packet, and it doesn't apply to me necessarily because I already did this, but you are going to want to kind of massage the bag a little bit, because I have no idea what your icings look like at this point. They were made, on Sunday. So if you need to, like, if sometimes the water separates from the color and the icing, so you're just going to want to massage, make sure that it's all completely mixed in there, especially the thin ones, okay? And so I would just, each one, if you haven't done it already, kind of do this for about 30 seconds to a minute while I'm talking. To each one, just make sure it's all mixed up, because when we go to put it in, we don't want it to be all like funny looking. And so we make sure you have a pair of scissors too, right? I already said that, but if you're just coming in, a couple people just came in. All right, so after you kind of massage all of them, we are going to learn how to hold the icing bag and to outline. Of course, like I said, that's the hardest part. So grab the yellow that has a 1 on it, right? So this is the thick one. And you're going to hold right under the knot. So it's right by my thumb into my palm, and I'm actually squeezing from my palm, and I'm not taking my whole hand and squeezing. Okay, so right under the knot, and I'm going to lift this up a little bit because I want y'all to see it a little bit better here. There we go. Okay, so we're right here, and we're really squeezing from our palm where our thumb is. All right, you're gonna let your hands rest. Again, don't squeeze too hard with your whole hand. Let it come from your palm. Sometimes I kind of get my thumb under, like into the rest of my fingers, and that helps. Okay, and then you're going to take the other finger, your pointer finger, on your other hand. So depending on if you're right or left, you're going to place it right at that tip to kind of steady your hand. So as we're moving, you might find you're a little bit shaky. Just take this finger, boom, and then it steadies it, controls the movement a little bit more. Hopefully that helps for you. Okay, so starting out, I always say this, do not cut too big of a hole, but we are going to cut a tiny hole, and so before you cut, you can watch me. But all I'm going to take is just a little bit off the tip so that the little piece that comes off, that little plastic piece that just flew off, almost looks like the tip of a pencil lead, of a number 2 pencil, right? So like in grade school, you have the little piece pop off. That width of the pencil lead is how much the width of that hole should be. Okay, so if you cut it too small, you can always recut it, make it a little bit bigger. Okay, and then what I do typically is I just kind of like press the ends so that that seam is a hole. Sometimes it can be kind of flat, so you just want to kind of make sure that it looks like a hole, and then you're ready to rock and roll. So we are going to be working on the worksheet. Everybody should have a worksheet. Okay, and this is practice. So again, remember how to hold it. We're going to let that icing drag. We're going to start at the lines because those are the easiest. And you don't want to be touching the paper. You actually want to be about 1 centimeter off of that paper and just let that icing drag onto your paper. So remember, the plastic tip should not be touching. Sometimes I'm even like 1 inch up. It kind of depends. Sometimes when I teach classes, like the camera's, like this phone is in the way, so I kind of tend to go up a little bit more, but typically I'm about 1 centimeter off of that paper. Okay. So this is the yellow with the 1, so it's the thick yellow, and we are working on our worksheet, practicing that steadiness and that control. To end the line, I typically push down and then pull up to like kind of stop the line. I'm trying to think of all the questions that people usually have in classes. So if you have any questions, comment, because I can't hear you, but comment and I will answer because I can see them on my phone. Okay. And we're going to move, once you're done with the lines, I'm not rushing you at all, but you will do the entire worksheet. The squiggles, the curves, everything that kind of has like a curve to it is a little hard. Take your time, try to be patient with it. If you go too fast, you're going to break the icing line. So we don't want to go too fast. Just let that icing kind of flow off onto the paper. And if you imagine this, is on a cookie as like the outline, you can always wipe it off. Like let's say I really mess up and I like totally miss this line. You can wipe off, and even on the cookie you can wipe off the outline. That's why we have the napkins actually. And you can redo it. And try not to be too stressed, right? If you don't already have one, get a glass of wine and just enjoy it. It's, some people are like super stressed, like with painting with a twist and that kind of thing. The good news with this is even if you are stressed, you can eat the cookies afterwards. You don't have a painting chilling in your house forever. So my question to everybody is, does your yellow line cover the entire black part of the paper? And if it does, then you're good. You cut the right amount. If you can see the black line because your yellow is too thin, then you're going to need to cut a little bit more off the tip. And then, of course, if you're covering like 2 holes, then you cut too big of a hole. Like if your line is like gigantic, then I would suggest cutting a bigger hole in this and squeezing the icing out into the bag. And then redoing basically. So if anybody is there, like, let me know in the comments and I can show you how to do that. But if we're all good, then cool. So everybody's just going to keep going with their little worksheet. The hearts and the circles are the hardest part. It doesn't matter if you do the inside or outside. Again, this is just a practice worksheet, so I'm not going to grade it. Everybody always asks that in person. I'm not grading it. It's just to practice the outlining because it is the hardest part. And I've found that if we do this, we feel a little bit more confident when we do it on the cookie. So, I'm not doing the whole worksheet, but I'm just going to do the hearts and then talk a little bit more. So again, that finger right at the base to help control the movement. Let that icing drag right onto the paper. And I'm going to give, so the girls here are still working, so I'm going to give y'all a little bit more time. Yeah, so she said her hand hurts. Just be mindful, like so sometimes people's hands will kind of cramp up a little bit. Just be mindful where you've got, so all that icing, right, is pushed down, and now I'm not all the way up here. I'm right where that icing is, and I'm squeezing kind of like with my thumb in the palm, right? And sometimes I kind of like put this thumb into it to help give a little bit more pressure. And see, like, you already see my icing falling out, right? That's a good thing. So that means I'm squeezing enough. And so just making sure that you're not squeezing too hard. But if you do find that your hand is cramping up, it could be that you're just not necessarily squeezing it the right way. So you want to make sure that you're squeezing from your palm. So hopefully that helps. But yeah, I've done it. I've been doing this for, oh goodness, 7 years now. So I guess I'm used to it. My hands do not cramp. But sometimes when I'm writing, like if I'm doing it for literally like 12 hours, sometimes like writing, then yes, my hand cramps for sure. But okay, so when you're done with the worksheet, we are going to set this aside. We are done with that. And do you feel a little bit more confident to do it on a cookie? Hopefully. If this is your first time, I hope you feel great. That is why I'm here, because we are going to walk step by step through each of these cookies. And these cookies are actually beginner to intermediate, so they're not like super duper hard, but they're not like the easiest cookies either. Okay, so we have our helmets. We're gonna outline and flood. So flood is the term that you use when you're putting the thin icing inside. After you do the outline, we call it flooding, and It's so much fun. It's so satisfying. It's my favorite part. So we have to do the hard part first, which is the outline. So since we already have our thick yellow cut and ready, we're going to use this, okay? And here is our finished product. So we have to basically outline all of this, but we're coming down here. We're not going to do this part. We're going to come across, down, and then you're going to do the entire outline of the rest of the helmet. Okay? So, and you can watch me, or you can, go for it if you've already done this before. But again, holding it the same way, we're going to outline, but we're going to cut off right there. Okay? And we're trying to go as far to the edge of the cookie without it completely falling off of the cookie. And again, if you do it and you don't like it, just wipe it off. Maybe not with your hand, but if you're giving these to people, but with a toothpick, just wipe it off, and you can do it again as many times as you want. I think I had said somewhere in the packet that you might have some cookies with cracks in it, which I am sorry for. That is just me having made 600 and not caring when I rolled it out that they were cracks, but I particularly don't care. Some people do care. The way that you fix cracks, like I'm just going to do this one. No, we're not actually doing the shirt, but like let's say you had a crack, you would just drop in a little bit of icing to fill that crack. But most of y'all should be, it would be fine anyway. I always worry that it's gonna like fall like under the crack, even though it's actually never happened. I still like to say that. So, okay, so are we good? Make sure that you have no gaps whatsoever, that you have this complete barrier of an outline right here. Okay, so if you do have a spot where there's a gap, put a little bit more in there. Make sure none of that icing that goes in is going to get out or seep under. Does that make sense? Okay. So now we have our thin yellow. So we're ditching the one that has a 1 on it, and we're grabbing the thin. Okay, so hopefully you massaged it. Hopefully it looks all mixed in. This time we are not going to cut a tiny one. We're going to cut just a little bit bigger. So I don't know if you can see that, then great. It's a little bit bigger because if it were small, we would be sitting there forever trying to spread it. All right, and I keep mine upside down when I'm not using it, or I fold that tip in so that it doesn't leak out. We need our toothpick. So, yes, toothpicks. All right, I'm using just what you're using. Next time I'll have bigger toothpicks, but Walmart was sold out. So these ones will work just as well. These are for popping air bubbles and spreading the icing in. So what I do, if you want to watch me first, I'm going to let this squeeze out all into the cookie. So I start outside and then I spiral in. And you want to put enough icing in that you're only sitting here for, 10 to 30 seconds spreading to the outside, filling any gaps, and then poking any air bubbles. But again, you want it to be 10 to 30 seconds because this icing is going to set. Yeah, if y'all are ready, you can go ahead and do that. This icing is going to set in about 2 minutes. So in about 2 minutes, if I go to poke it, it's going to be messed up. So you have the short window to pour in that icing. So you don't want to put in too much that you're overflowing, but not too little that you're sitting there forever trying to spread it. So usually I say, if you start going, right now it's been about 30 seconds to a minute depending on when you started. If you're sitting there for more than a minute from now, then go ahead and drop some more icing in. And you're going to find if you're there for too long, it's going to start to kind of crust, which is crazy because it's such a short time, 2 minutes. But it's going to start to crust on you. And so that's at that point you want to just, you know, try to spread it as quick as possible and then just wait and try not to mess it up because once you miss that 2-minute window, it is going to be a little bit harder to spread that icing. Alright, cool. And my 2 girls here just finished theirs pretty much. If you do have some that are like little mountains, you might want to just give it a little shake or tap, kind of try to like set that icing. Royal icing is absolutely amazing. I love it. I love that it covers your mistakes of the outline, if any, and it just like sets itself. It's so much fun. It's so satisfying. That's why people love those videos of us like doing it, because it's just so satisfying to see it all drop in and then just be like so perfect. So if you have finished this step, we are actually going to move this cookie up to the top or the side. We just don't want to bump it because if we do, it will get messed up. Christine asks, is there a secret in covering the outline? Yeah, so some people really have this fascination with like making sure that this, like, I know you can see this outline right here, right? People don't want to see that. So, I mean, I personally, sometimes I will, but it's very time consuming. So the trick is you would take this toothpick, and I can't right now because it's already set, but you would take this toothpick and just kind of drag a little bit of that icing to kind of cover that outline. If you're more advanced, people really care about that. Beginners, they're like, oh, I didn't even notice that I could see the outline. So yeah, that's just something, if you do want to do that, you would take your little toothpick and kind of spread it out. Hopefully that answers that question. Okay, cool. So we are going to let that dry. All right. And we're going to grab our t-shirt, which is a jersey in this case. All right. And we have to do the same step except with the white. So the same step as the very beginning. We are going to make sure that it's a 1, right? Because that is the thick or the thin. Thick, right. So we're going to cut a little hole. Remember, that little piece is going to be about the width of a little number 2 pencil lead piece. And if it's bigger, you know, don't worry about it. If it's like really, really wide, again, comment. I will show you how to transfer it into this bag. Because I am watching the comments, so if you need anything, just let me know. Okay, and so we're going to do the same thing. I press it to make sure that it is a hole and not flat. And we're going to do the same thing with the one of the white. You're just going to go the entire outline. Again, we're trying to get kind of as close to the edge as possible, but again, it doesn't have to be perfect, and if you mess up, which I just did, we can wipe it off. I'm like looking over my phone right now, so it's kind of hard to see what I'm doing sometimes. But I'm gonna redo that part. And if you do want to cover the outline because you made a mistake, like with that thin, that would be a good time. You could drop in the thin white, and then if you had like a little mistake, you could take your toothpick and just kind of cover that part that you messed up. Okay. And then the same thing as the yellow, we're going to take our thin white. All right, and if y'all need to, mine is good because I already massaged it, but if you do need them, and that's only when I shipped them. Typically when I do a class, I've already made them. I made them like the day before. So in this case, it's like 5 days before, so that's just why I'm saying that. Just, we want to mix all the color together. So we have that bigger hole right there, right? And again, we're going to do the outside, and then we're going to spiral in. And you don't necessarily have to be touching that outline when you first put it in, because that's why you have the toothpick. Okay, and we take our little toothpick, and I kind of swirl it. I don't just drag, because this is faster if you kind of like swirl and drag. Once you get like more advanced, slow down just a little, please. Sure. So once you get a little bit more advanced, you can actually get to the point where you almost don't need to use your toothpick like at all. And so when I teach a class, I do use my toothpick because I understand that people are more beginners, but sometimes when I'm just doing cookies on my own, I do like the flooding, and then I might do like 1 or 2 times with the toothpick, and that's it. So as you get really good, you kind of like know how much icing should go in there perfectly. But for now, like again, you have that 2-minute window, so you want to drop it in, spread. When you feel that it's starting to kind of like not spread and kind of picks up with the toothpick, that's when you want to either add more in or give it a little shake to kind of like speed up the settling process. Okay. So again, we are going to let this one dry. I'm just slowing down a little bit. Somebody had asked me to, so that is good. That is what I want to hear. If you do have anything that you need, just comment. Alright, so we want this, like, see how it's kind of like, hopefully it looks kind of like a fluffy pillow on top of your cookie. And that's what we want. We don't want to be able to see the cookie underneath. We want there to be enough icing that it's like a fluffy pillow on top. And the meringue powder is what makes it fluffy, in case you're wondering. So the royal icing, the meringue powder is it's an egg white substitute, and so I use meringue powder. I don't actually use egg whites, but that, when you mix it up, it makes it kind of like fluffy. And yep, that is what royal icing, kind of the base, the main thing other than powdered sugar is the meringue powder. Okay, I think it's safe to move on. Just let me know if you have any questions. So we have, just so you can see where I'm at, I have my 2 cookies up there. They are drying, hopefully a little bit, and they will be ready to be detailed very soon. Not necessarily very soon, but it'll feel very soon. Okay, so let's do our football. So that's the finished product from like 3 weeks ago, which is why the white's fading. All right. So this one, we are on to the next color, which is brown. All right, you have the one. So do not accidentally grab the thin one. Make sure that you grab the one that has a 1 on it. That is your thick one. We are going to cut that tiny hole, just like you did with the thick yellow and the thick whites. All right. Now, this one, you will notice, has some little bumps at the top, right? I have no idea what they're called. Oh, the strings, right? Okay. Ridges, yeah, but they're the football, the white part, so we are actually going to cut those off because those are going to be whites. All right. Okay, so that's the top. So just make sure when you're looking at it, you see the little ridges. That is the top of the cookie. Okay, and we will start. It really doesn't matter where you start. I'm gonna come to the bottom, so we're going to outline, but then when we get to the top, we're gonna keep with the same kind of like egg shape, and then we're gonna leave those little ridges blank. Okay, so there we go. So we don't want to go over. And if you do end up going over it accidentally, whoops, I just messed it up. If you do end up going over it accidentally, no worries. You can either wipe it off, or we'll just go over it with the whites. And I have to go back over that because I just totally took that part off. Okay. So, I have been keeping up with LSU football, by the way. And, of course, UF here. But I kind of forget, like, I think to actually, you know, like, keep up with LSU, and then I go, oh, I probably should support my own city and school. But we are moving on to the thin brown. All right, we are going to cut that a little bit bigger than the outline hole. All right. And we're going to do the same thing. So nothing different. We're doing the same thing that we've been doing. We are going from the outside all the way in. Again, you want to have enough that you are not sitting there forever with the toothpick and pushing it all the way to the edge, popping in the air bubbles. Yeah, so my husband is he's at UF currently, so he's a Gator. But he does not care about their football. And I thought I was going to be a Gator, but we'll see. That's just crazy. They literally just changed the program last year, so I guess, and we were like reading the website, and we totally missed that it said doctorate. Like there wasn't even a master's program anymore. Oh boy. All right. So again, once that 2-minute window is up, try not to touch it. Sometimes if you over flood your cookie, you will have like, it'll literally just like it said, overflow. And then at that point, sometimes you can try to like kind of pick some out. But my best advice about that is if you can catch it in time, pick up the part that might be falling over the edge. But if you can't catch it in time, let it dry. And when it's dry, you can kind of just scrape it off really easily, because sometimes if you're sitting there and you're trying to like get it off when it's still wet, it's going to keep over flooding. So if you just let it sit, and then 30 minutes later just scrape it off, then you won't mess it up as much. Like, so mine, I'm saying that because mine is a little bit overflowed there, not like all the way, but I'm gonna scrape that off later. Okay, so we have, so these three up here are gonna be drying, so try not to bump them at all. We want to keep those free from anything, letting them dry. All right, we're coming to the fun part. So you're going to grab your sprinkles. Okay. And if you saw, obviously you do know where this is going, but these are going to be our people in the stadiums. Okay. So really cool. That's what that's going to look like. Okay. So I don't know if you can tell, but this is white icing. So we are going to somewhere kind of halfway. I did like a little bit, like the stadium, I did a little bit less than half. Okay, so this is an edible marker, which you don't have, but just pretend that this right here, we're going to kind of divide. All right, so this is going to be the stadium, this is going to be the field. So we are going to outline with white that kind of smaller section, and then we're going to flood it with the white after you let the outline dry a little bit. And then while it's still wet, you're literally just going to like dump these sprinkles on because you want it to fill the whole thing. And you should have enough sprinkles in there, and just kind of dump them on, make them look like people. So the first thing we're doing is we are coming across with that thick white, the one that has a 1, make sure it has a 1. Okay, and then you can imagine the line because you don't have that edible line, but just kind of come across with the white. And then we're going to also outline the top. And just a reminder to make sure you're holding it right under that knot with your thumb kind of pressing into it, taking that finger at the base. Okay. So we should have a little semicircle of white. And now we will flood it. Try not to put too much of your thin whites in there because sometimes the sprinkles can kind of weigh it down a little bit. So if you're able to kind of judge that, I would just put like a little bit less than you did on the other ones, but still making it like be like so that you can't see the cookie underneath, right? But and I just these sprinkles are pretty light, but I do have some sprinkles that are kind of heavy, and sometimes they do kind of press into the icing and they actually overflood it, even though it wasn't before. Then you have the sprinkles and it's overflowing. So while it's wet, and this might get a little bit messy, so just be prepared for that. And no rush, actually, with this. You have a few minutes before you need to put the sprinkles on, so I'll actually wait a little bit. And we are going to put them on. And if you find that you're kind of starting to like run a little bit low, just do it in the parts that really need it. And actually what I did with the one that was pictured, I took my finger and grabbed the ones that like were on my parchment, and I placed them on the edge where the white was, because it's kind of hard to get like the edge. So if that makes it, I don't know if that makes sense, but I'm grabbing and just kind of like placing them in places on the edge that might not have. I'm a perfectionist, so it's like need sprinkles everywhere. And so the reason why we did these sprinkles first, obviously, is because we have the stadium, and so we didn't want to do the stadium and then we had all of the sprinkles like going into the field. Sorry, we didn't want to do the field and then it was like the sprinkles went into the field. So that is why we did the sprinkles first, and then you can actually just take your toothpick and like brush off any of the ones that are on the blank part of the cookie. So my girls here that are taking the class with me in person, they had enough sprinkles. Hopefully everybody did. Again, you can take those excess ones, right? Okay, cool. So that part is done. And we are going to do, hopefully everybody is done with that. I'm trying not to go too fast. But I'm going to explain. So the green one is kind of a thin, it's a thin to medium one, so it's not as thin as the brown or like the white or the yellow, but it's a little bit thicker, so we're actually going to outline and flood with this one. So you first want to cut a tiny hole. Again, if you just hopped on, that little piece that comes off is going to be about the width of a pencil lead that pops off of a number 2 pencil. Okay, so what we're first going to do is we're going to outline first, and then we're going to let it dry a little bit, and then we're going to flood. So all you have to do, you don't even necessarily need to do down the middle, you can just outline this bottom part. But if you feel so inclined to do so, you can also, I always show this as well, if you want to come up right under that white, you can do that as well. Not necessary, but some people like to do that. And so we're just outlining first. And we're only using green on this cookie, so we are about to cut a bigger hole. Okay, so before you get started, unless you already have, this one may be a little bit harder to like spread. It might take a little bit longer to completely set. So we want to try not to use the toothpick like at all. We want to put all of this in and just maybe a couple strokes with the toothpick. But because it's a little bit thicker, what we're going to do is we're going to put the thin in, we're going to shake it and tap it without messing up the cookie. And then hopefully it'll be completely set. All right, so the advantage of this is you only have to make one consistency of icing instead of 2. So some people like that. But the other thing that's not as fun is it is a little bit tougher to set. So we're going to cut a little bit bigger. So I'm just a smidge off. All right. And then we're going to flood. But we don't really want to have any gaps or cracks, because you want to try to use that toothpick just a little bit. And not too much. So once you kind of fill in those holes, give it a shake and a tap, like not too aggressively, just, you know, kind of setting it. Oh shoot, yep, except for that. So if that just happened to you, push those sprinkles back. That's y'all will find if you've taken classes with me, I mess up a lot when I'm teaching. So I push the sprinkles in. I think, you know what, and I think this even happened to me last time. Of course it did. So I'm just pushing the sprinkles in or pushing them in, and these sprinkles actually are pretty like easy to move, which is good. But comment if you maybe I'm the only one who made that mistake, but I kind of want to know if anybody else made that mistake, because I am the teacher. Yeah, you could shake it the other way. That would be, and it probably would set without you, like, you know, shaking it. I think it is thin enough to do so. Okay. So we're going to let this dry. Gonna let it dry. So this one, if you've got your white with the sprinkles and your green, you can carefully. Move it. So we now have, we should have, it's a mess, right? Sprinkled everywhere. We now have our 4 cookies, okay? And we're letting them just kind of dry for now. Sometimes it gets a little bit like crusted over, so you occasionally just want to make sure you kind of wipe that end a little bit, because when the oxygen gets exposed to it, it can tend to kind of crust up a little bit. And so that's like, if I leave it sitting out, it'll crust up, and then I'll go to squeeze and it won't come out. So that's why you just kind of like want to scrape the tip off a little bit. And then, yeah, the bigger hole, and then making sure you're like squeezing from the top down is good too. We are going to do the purple. So I'm going to wait just a little bit in case y'all are out and about. But whoever is ready to rock and roll, we are going to have our purple. And I want you to massage it a little bit. If you haven't yet, these dark colors, they, after a few days, they kind of tend to kind of separate a little bit, so that's why I just want to make sure that that purple is perfect and mixed in. Okay, so we are going to detail. This is a thick one. It should be thick. It might be like medium to thick, but we are going to be doing on this particular cookie the helmet outline, the LSU, and the paw print. So if you are a little bit worried about the LSU, do not worry, it'll be fine. I will say that once it's on the cookie, you can't go back, you can't take it off. The detail is one of the harder things. Once it's on, you really can't correct it if you mess up. But we are going to take a tiny hole, just like we did with the outline. All right, and the first thing we will do, so you're going to notice this is a little bit thick, but I want to kind of point out here that you have a dot, right? And it's right where it divots in. And so I use this as kind of like my reference for how to do the straps of the helmet. So right where it kind of divots in, not at the outline, but about 1 centimeter in, we're going to draw a little circle. And it's literally going to be a dot, so you're going to kind of like make a circle and drop some more in so that it is like a little candy dot on top of your helmets. And then that's going to kind of help us with where the strap part kind of begins. And so we're going to do the outside part of the helmet. So we start right next to that dot, okay, and we're going to come meet the top part. So that's a little bit hard because you're kind of making your own line. If you do mess up, you can always take your toothpick. Like mine is kind of like falling off. I literally just take my toothpick and like drag it back, and it looks like I didn't mess up at all. See, I am not perfect, even though I've done this for 7 years. I still mess up quite a bit. I just know how to hide it. Yeah, so we're going all the way down to right before it divots in. Okay. Now for the strap part. So this is like a little bit tricky, but not too bad. We're gonna go, the first line is gonna be right at the middle of where this part is right here. We're gonna go from there and go straight across to that line that you just made. So this is probably the hardest part to kind of describe. Okay. Now the next line we're going to do is from that top part that's sticking out, and then you're going to go like straight across to the line that the first line you made. Don't worry if yours does not look anything like mine. You can look up like helmet cookies, and everybody does their little straps differently. So you can use your artistic flair and do whatever you would like. Okay, now this bottom one, we're going to do that line right to the yellow, but then once we get to the yellow, we're going to come diagonal straight up to where that first line is. And I don't know if you saw that, but my line actually broke as I was coming. And so I, again, pretend like I didn't mess up and go right over it and use my toothpick to kind of mold it back. Yes, I'll slow down a little. It's the details that really kind of are a little bit harder. So the first thing we did was the little dot, right? And then right above it, we came up to the top of the helmet and we just outlined the whole top and outer part of the helmet. Then we came halfway and did a straight line to that first line. And then we did the third one, the second one on top, boom, straight across. And the third one on the bottom was straight to the yellow, diagonal up to meet those lines, that first line. And then, yeah, I'm doing this different than I did in the beginning. And then we're gonna fill this part, that curved part, right here. Now it looks a little bit more like helmet. And then our last line, we're gonna come, okay, so right where this, I'm gonna try to slow down, right where this third bottom line is, we're going to, where this bottom part is, so we're gonna come up diagonal to that first top line. So you have a lot of lines going on. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And again, obviously, you could look up on your phone, like, helmet cookies, and they have some that, like, have more lines down here. If you wanted to do that, you could. Again, as long as you look at it and you go, yeah, that looks like a helmet, I think we're good. Okay. The LSU, so block letters here. I would probably suggest first doing it on like your little parchment paper here, practicing away from the cookie. So we can't really do that with the lines necessarily, but we can do that for the LSU. So our LSU is going to be block letters. Oh, I need to come up a little bit so y'all can actually see that. So block letters, so we got just an L, and then our S is kind of like a 5, but a boxy 5. All right, and then again, this is perfect time where you use your little toothpick. And sometimes, like, if I want to make the ends look a little bit more defined, I'll kind of like take that toothpick and sort of just manipulate the icing a little bit. And then the U. So, U. So if you want to practice kind of somewhere on a napkin or a parchment paper, not quite on the cookie yet, just to get sort of an idea of what you're about to do. It's an L, and then an S that kind of looks like a 5, and then a U. And this LSU is going to go on the cookie. Now, I don't necessarily just go like straight across. I actually kind of curve it with the helmet, which is a little bit tricky. Because you do one letter, and then you kind of curve and do the next one, curve and do the U. But we do want to have the paw print underneath it, and if you are ready, you can also practice that. So the paw print is 4 dots first, and I made them look a little bit longer, so then I took my toothpick and just kind of like spread it to look more like an oval. And then the paw part is like, looks like a little kidney bean. Kidney, oh yeah, kidney. Or a bean. And then again, you can use that toothpick to kind of like spread or set. It's a little bit easy to manipulate, and it'll keep it, like it'll stay in place, right? So
the print is like an angle.
Yeah, so the print is a kidney? A kidney bean? I don't know, it's a kidney, right? I don't know how else to say. And so it's curved at the top, and then you kind of divot in. Hopefully everybody can see that. So I don't actually typically do this, but like I usually just go ahead and do it on the cookie. But I was finding, especially with the virtual class, I feel like it's better to practice because people were putting it on the cookie and then they were getting frustrated because it looked horrible. And I'm not saying that it's going to look perfect now that we practice, but hopefully if you practice one time, you can replicate that or make it better and put it on the cookie and not be as frustrated. So I'm going to go ahead and do it on the cookie, and my goal is to make it look similar to that. And then again, I'm going to curve the LSU. So I'm starting closer to the left. All right, and I'm just going to, once I have my first letter, then that'll be the basis for the next one. So then I turn my cookie a little bit. Okay. And then we're going to do the S. It doesn't have to be perfect. We do not have a projector, so not looking for perfection. This is usually the point of the class where people start to laugh because they're like, what is that? That is not an L and an S. All right, and then the U. And I use my toothpick to kind of make the edges look a little bit better. That paw print is right under the LSU. So again, 4 dots. Someone is on saying, I'm trying to see if it's something I can do. Yes, yes, it is. I mean, I'm serious. right, and then the kidney. I always say, you know, the detailing is really what people pay for in this. I when I'm like when I used to be like really swamped with orders, I would pay my girls to bake, and then sometimes if they felt comfortable with it, outline and flood. But then, and this was only when I got like really busy with tons of orders in that week, and then I would do all the detailing on my own. And so people really, it's like you see the cookie before the detailing, cool, whatever, but it's the detailing that really makes the cookies, and so that's kind of what people pay for, and that's what takes the most time and practice. So if you really feel like you're good and you got this, then maybe you should go into the cookie business. And it's a very detail oriented, hand-eye coordination kind of thing, so it's fun. Hopefully nobody's feeling super stressed. All right, so guess what? If you're at this point, you have just finished your very first cookie. Yay! And we have 3 more to go. And you're almost done. Okay, cool. So that one is finished. You can put that to the side. Let's do our jersey. This one, again, just a little bit difficult because you have the LSU and the 3. Okay, yeah, so the LSU is small. So that's also why I gave you another bag if you end up wanting to do that little part, or you don't have to do the LSU if you don't want to. But let's just do the easiest things first, which are the lines. And so we are going to use our purple, since we already have it in hand, hopefully. And so we've got sleeves, and like the shoulders have these little lines. It's pretty simple. So the first thing we're going to do is come right to the edge of that sleeve and just do a line across. And then we're going to imagine that there's a yellow line already right above that, and we're going to come just have a gap, come a little bit higher, and do another purple line. And you're going to do the same thing on this side as well. Right to the edge, straight across. A little gap. Straight across. Y'all good? Hopefully everybody is doing all right. Let me know if you have any questions. If you comment, I will see them. All right, and then at the shoulders, so right kind of by where it starts to kind of curve in, right next to that point, it's only gonna be about 1 centimeter. We're gonna do one line, and then again leave a gap for the yellow. Do another line, and the same thing both sides. Okay. While we have the purple here, did you think of your favorite football player? Number? You can do a 1, you can do a 3, you can do whatever is easier. I would not recommend doing a double digit. That is a little bit hard. But sometimes a 1 is easy. We could do a 1. What do y'all want to do? If whoever can comment, I can do a 1, or I can do a 3.
1.
You said 1. one might be a little bit easier, and then it'd be like, we're number 1. Okay, we can do a 1. Somebody said 2. I can teach a 2 as well. So where the sleeves end, we're going to start our number because we want to have a little bit of space to do the LSU on the top. 9, 2 and 9. Oh boy, I'm going to do a 1 for now, and then I can show you all the block, or you can even look on your phone for the blocks. But the 1, first thing, a little line straight across. Block numbers can be a little bit hard sometimes. Alright, second line, we're going to come down as long as you want. Alright, third out a little bit. Almost like a hangman, if y'all remember that game. That's kind of what it's going to look like. The top will be a little bit different. But we're going to come down, so we're doing the base. So it should look like that. Straight line up to the top. Now, so leave about 1 centimeter up from the top. Don't, like, you can't, if you end up finishing it, it's going to all get filled in with purple anyway, so it won't really matter. But about 1 centimeter, so once you're kind of about 1 centimeter from the top, you're going to come straight out across to meet with that line that's on the bottom. And then the last step is you're going to do a diagonal line up. And it should look like a 1. Okay, so at this point, we are literally just going to fill it in with the purple. Okay, and then you can take your toothpick to kind of manipulate it a little bit to sort of set in, or this would be a good time if you wanted to kind of shake it a little bit. Don't worry, it looks like I'm doing it very aggressively. The cookie is fine. Or the 3. So again, when I'm doing the jerseys, I typically just kind of like look at a number, like Google it, like a 1 block letter, or sorry, block number 1, and it'll pop up. So the 9 and the 2 would basically look like this, just filled in. So I'm curious to know who went with what. So we have a 1 over here and a 77, I think. She did a double digit. Okay. So we don't have a whole lot of time left, so what I'm going to do is I will say cut a little bit bigger hole here, cut this off, and I want to, if your tip is too big, y'all will not do this, I did not give you an extra bag, but the people who got a cookie kit should have a bag. And so what I do is I'm going to cut it off, stick it inside of the bag, because we want to get that really thin lettering, and we're literally going to like squeeze out the icing. If you cut a big hole, it should come out pretty easy. All right, and we're not using this for anything else, so you can squeeze it all out. And then this is how I do it, is I take it and I'm going to just tie a knot. So that I now have a bag that looks just like the others. Okay, and so for the LSU and the Nike sign, I did really, really tiny. So we're gonna do a tiny, tiny hole. So now you have, that's how you do it if you need a really, you know, tinier hole. Tiny so that we still can write with it, but not too tiny that it doesn't come out, right? So you want, but not too big. And then same thing like you did on the helmet. But now because it's thinner, we're like, oh, we can actually get those letters. So that's sometimes what I do when I go from doing regular detailing to then needing to do tiny, tiny. Just put it in a different bag, cut a smaller hole. The Nike sign is literally drop a little bit in and then just like drag it up. So let me repeat that. So you're gonna drop a little dot, okay? And then you're gonna squeeze and then come up like a check mark. You can always use your toothpick if you need to correct anything. It's easier to manipulate it. All right. So some of you may decide not to do that part. That is okay. Now, with our yellow, make sure you have a 1 on it. We're going to fill in these little gaps. So we're going to do a straight line across. Just where, right in between those purples, okay? And if you need to pop off, need to go handle something, just know that this video will be available to you on my Facebook page, and I'm also going to post it on YouTube. So if I'm going too fast or you need to leave, you know, do what you need to do, and you can always come back to it. Our top of our shirt is actually going to get kind of like, you know, like a shirt has inside and out, obviously. The line kind of makes it look a little bit, have like a little bit more definition so that it's like, oh, this is the front and that's the back of the shirt. So it's the thick one, boom, boom, a little V for a V-neck. Okay. Moving right along. Second cookie is done. Y'all feeling good? All right. And since we have the white in hand, how about we finish the stadium cookie? So for reference, we have 5 lines. The easiest way to do this is to take that first one right down the middle to do that one first, because then you can kind of make your other lines related to that one single line. So a white with a 1, that's our thick. We're going to be, so try to make it right down the middle, and we're going to go from the bottom of the green straight up to where the sprinkles are. Okay. So there you have this half and you have this half. We need to fit 2 lines on each half. So 2 here, 2 on this side. So imagine you've got to split this, right, between 2 lines. So about 1 centimeter from that first line, you're going to start and you're going to come diagonal down to the bottom. And then again, about a centimeter to the right of that one, you're going to start your line and then go out again diagonal. And then you're going to try to make them symmetrical, but do the same thing on both sides. So sometimes at this point I start at the bottom and go up, now that I have that line. And if you mess up, you kind of can't wipe it off, I'm sorry. But I think I did on this one, I did like take the toothpick and wipe off a little bit. But after you do the lines, this one is done. Yay! 3 down, 1 to go. Okay. So, y'all still with me? A little quiet on the comments. Alright, last one is the football. So, we are using the whites. Again, we still have this one in our hand, so that's perfect. What we're going to do first is we're going to do the top part. So the top part, this one's a little bit faded, but as you can see, we're going to draw a straight line across. It's a curved line. And then where you see these little ridges, you're going to come and do like little lines from the outside in. Okay? So the first thing you're going to do is just this curved line right on the edge of the top. And you're going to kind of extend it from those ridges about a centimeter. Can y'all see that? Laces, duh, thank you. I'm always like, what is this called? And literally, there's always one class that I literally I don't know the name of something, and there's always somebody that knows. All right, and then you're going to go from the top of the ridge and down. So I kind of like to make it sort of like look a little bit two-dimensional if possible. And I kind of thicken it up a little bit. But you let that icing drop, and then you just kind of like lay it on top. Lay it on top. She said Google. That's funny. Well, see, when I'm teaching a class, I really can't look at Google. So, even still, it's like super helpful when people know the answer. So I went over it twice. Whoops, sorry. I went over it twice to kind of make it a little bit thicker, and then I take my toothpick and just kind of press down the little parts that sort of point up sometimes, because it's a thicker icing, so it doesn't set as well. All right, we're almost done. After you do the laces like this, you can make them bigger if you want to as well. I kind of just go along with the ridge of the cookie. So we're gonna put aside the white. We are about to come back to it, but first we're going to put a little bit more emphasis on this football. So you're gonna have this brown, thick, of course, right? So just make sure it's got a 1 on it. And we're going to curve from like a little smile from one end to the other. Yeah, I was thinking like a coffee bean. But yeah, like Amazon, I smile. So you just got this little, and then, whoops, we have some little dots. Like, you don't have to do this if you don't want to, but see how I put little dots. I once did that to one cookie for a football order, and I thought it looked good. So, but remember that icing is a little bit wet underneath, so just be careful when you're doing these little circles. Again, I create a little circle, and this is just kind of random dots, but I create a circle and then I drop it in a little bit. We're going to leave a little bit of room for the side white line. This just kind of makes it look like it has a little bit of texture. When I do football cookies for an order, I actually have some, what is it? Like a mesh. Is that it? Yeah, it was like a boxing glove bag that I like cut up because it has these like little, I don't know how to say it, but these little mesh holes, and I use an airbrush, and I put it over as like a stencil, and then I airbrush, and when I take it off, it has this texture, like it kind of makes it look sort of textured, even though it's just airbrushed on these little like circles. The airbrush is awesome. If anybody does want to invest in one, they're awesome. You can do so many things with them. Okay. So our last step, y'all, last step of the night is going to be these little lines. And they are also a curved line. So you're going to be not quite all the way to the edge, but we're going to go curved line with this white. And then you can keep it like that if you kind of like the thin version, or you can go over it multiple times to make this line a little thicker. I think I'm just going to do 2 times. And then again, I'm using my toothpick to just kind of smooth out the edges. Same thing on this side here. And I'm doing double time. Taking the toothpick. Okay. And then you have your football. Oh, I must have bumped that without knowing it. Alright, so that completes the set. So I hope that y'all had a lot of fun. If you want to do your other 4 cookies, I mean, you might have enough icing, you might not have enough icing, but I'm sure you'll have enough to do at least 2 more, is my guess.